The Year Without a Summer, 1816. When a volcano killed summer and created Frankenstein. Imagine waking up on July 4th, 1816 in New England to find frost covering your crops and snow falling from gray skies. In Switzerland, Mary Shelley huddles inside a cold, dark villa, inventing Frankenstein by candlelight. In China, millions starve as the Yellow River changes course. In Ireland, potato crops fail, triggering mass emigration. This isn't science fiction, it's the year without a summer, when a single volcanic eruption in Indonesia plunged the entire northern hemisphere into an apocalyptic climate disaster that reshaped world history. April 10th, 1815. Mount Tambora, a towering volcano on the Indonesian island of Sumbawa, had been rumbling for weeks. Local Raja Zainuddin dismissed the tremors. His 40,000 subjects had lived peacefully in Tambora's shadow for generations. The mountain provided fertile soil, and its slopes were covered with thriving villages, spice gardens, and rice terraces. At 7 p.m. on April 10th, Tambora exploded with the force of 1,000 hydrogen bombs. The sound was heard 1,200 miles away in Sumatra, like massive artillery fire that never stopped. Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles, British governor in Java, wrote, "The noise was tremendous, heard distinctly at Makassar, 300 miles away. We thought it was distant cannon fire, perhaps from a great naval battle." But this was no battle. Tambora had just become the most powerful volcanic eruption in recorded human history, ejecting 38 cubic miles of rock, ash, and debris, enough to bury all of London under 100 feet of volcanic material. The eruption column reached 28 miles into the stratosphere, where sulfur dioxide mixed with water vapor to form a blanket of reflective aerosols that would circle the globe. The immediate devastation was biblical. Tambora's eruption killed 10,000 people instantly, but that was just the beginning. Pyroclastic flows, superhot avalanches of gas and rock, raced down the mountainside at 100 mph, vaporizing everything in their path. The entire kingdom of Tambora, with its sophisticated civilization and 40,000 inhabitants, was wiped from existence in hours. Captain Phillips of the British ship Benares, anchored 1,000 miles away, wrote, "By noon, though the sun shone clear, the sky became overcast. The air was filled with fine dust, and the sun appeared through a thick haze. By evening, we were in total darkness, a darkness so profound we couldn't see our hands before our faces. The ash cloud spread across the Indonesian archipelago, then the Indian Ocean, eventually encircling the Earth. For 3 days, the sun disappeared completely across a 600-mile radius. People lit lamps at midday. Ships navigated by compass in daytime darkness. Crops withered under the ash blanket, and the sea turned the color of blood from volcanic minerals. The ash settled within months, but Tambora's true weapon was invisible. Sulfur dioxide gas that formed a reflective veil 15 miles above Earth, blocking sunlight and cooling the planet by 3 degrees Celsius, the largest temperature drop in 500 years. By spring 1816, the Northern Hemisphere was experiencing unprecedented weather. In New England, farmer Chauncey Jerome recorded, "June was the coldest ever known. Frost every morning. On June 6th, snow fell several inches deep. Corn froze in the ground. We had to wear winter coats and light fires to keep warm." Europe fared worse. The Swiss Alps saw continuous rain and flooding. Lake Geneva rose to dangerous levels, forcing evacuations. In Germany, wine harvests failed for the first time in centuries. Historian John Post wrote, "The summer of 1816 was the coldest on record. Average temperatures were 3–6 degrees below normal across Europe and North America. Crop failures triggered global catastrophe. In Ireland, potato harvests collapsed, beginning a cycle of famine that would culminate in the Great Irish Famine decades later. In Wales, grain prices increased 700%. Starving peasants rioted across Europe, storming granaries and attacking merchants. New England experienced its worst agricultural disaster in recorded history. Vermont farmer William Fessenden wrote, "We planted corn 3 times. Each time it froze. By August, we had no crops, no hay for cattle, no grain for winter. Many families abandoned their farms and headed west. Better to risk the frontier than starve here. The Great Migration of 1816 to 1817 saw 200,000 Americans abandon New England for the Ohio River Valley and beyond. Entire communities packed their belongings into wagons and walked west, driven by hunger and desperation. This migration populated the American Midwest decades earlier than otherwise would have occurred. In China, the climate disaster triggered the Yangtze River floods, while drought affected northern provinces. The Yellow River, swollen with unusual rainfall, changed its course, an event that displaced millions and contributed to social upheaval that would eventually topple the Qing dynasty. June 1816. Villa Diodati, a secluded mansion overlooking Lake Geneva, became an unlikely creative crucible. 19-year-old Mary Godwin, later Shelley, had eloped with poet Percy Shelley, and they were visiting Lord Byron, the era's most notorious literary celebrity. Byron's personal physician, John Polidori, completed their circle. The haunted summer trapped them indoors. Mary Shelley later wrote, "It proved a wet, ungenial summer. An incessant rain often confined us for days to the house. We amused ourselves with German ghost stories, which had fallen into our hands." Byron proposed a competition. Each would write a supernatural story. On June 16th, after discussing experiments that might animate dead matter, Mary had her famous waking dream. "I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life." That vision became Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, perhaps the most influential horror novel ever written, born directly from Tambora's climate catastrophe. Polidori wrote The Vampire, creating modern vampire literature. The volcanic winter that killed crops and triggered migrations also birthed the Gothic horror genre. As the crisis deepened, humans displayed both remarkable ingenuity and disturbing desperation. In Germany, Baron Karl von Drais invented the running machine, the precursor to the bicycle, partly because horses were dying from lack of feed. His invention revolutionized transportation decades later. In Scotland, desperate farmers began experimenting with kelp as cattle feed. Thomas Telford accelerated road construction projects to provide employment for starving workers, infrastructure that would prove vital during the Industrial Revolution. But desperation also revealed humanity's darker side. In Switzerland, beggars roamed the countryside in armed bands. In France, grain riots turned violent as hungry mobs attacked government buildings. An English observer in Paris wrote, "The poor are desperate beyond description. They break into bakeries and devour raw flour. Children fight dogs for scraps of bread in the streets." Medical records from 1816-1817 show massive increases in malnutrition-related diseases, infant mortality, and suicide rates across Europe and North America. The crisis pushed many societies to the brink of collapse. The atmospheric veil began dissipating in late 1817, but recovery took years. Agricultural systems needed time to rebuild, and the social changes were permanent. The mass migration from New England accelerated westward expansion, establishing new communities from Ohio to Illinois. Many migrants carried New England's Puritan values and educational traditions, shaping American culture far beyond their original borders. In Europe, the crisis accelerated scientific and technological development. Crop failures spurred agricultural innovation and the study of weather patterns. Justus von Liebig began developing chemical fertilizers in response to soil exhaustion. The systematic study of climatology emerged from attempts to understand what had caused the global cooling. The demographic changes were enormous. Ireland's population, already stressed by the 1816 failures, became increasingly vulnerable to future potato famines. The Chinese migration patterns established during the climate crisis contributed to political instability that would plague the dynasty for decades. The Year Without a Summer reveals how interconnected our world was even in 1816. A volcanic eruption in remote Indonesia triggered crop failures in Vermont, inspired literature in Switzerland, caused migration in America, and changed river courses in China. It was perhaps humanity's first truly global environmental crisis. Tambora's legacy extends far beyond climate. Without the volcanic winter, Mary Shelley might never have written Frankenstein. The Great Migration might have occurred decades later, changing American history. Agricultural innovations spurred by the crisis laid groundwork for the Green Revolution. Even the bicycle emerged from this catastrophe. The eruption also demonstrated human resilience and adaptability. Faced with global climate disaster, people didn't simply despair. They innovated, migrated, created art, and built new communities. They turned catastrophe into opportunity, darkness into literature, and desperation into discovery. Today, as we face our own climate challenges, Tambora's story offers both warning and hope. It shows how quickly climate can change and how devastating the consequences can be. But it also reveals humanity's remarkable ability to adapt, create, and even thrive in the face of seemingly impossible challenges. Sometimes our darkest hours produce our brightest innovations. Next episode, the 1904 St. Louis Olympic Marathon, the most insane race in history. Imagine a marathon where runners dodge wild dogs, drink rat poison as energy drinks, and hitchhike partway through the race. One man nearly dies from eating rotten apples, another runs barefoot after his shoes fall apart, and the winner was carried across the finish line by his trainers. This is the story of the most chaotic, dangerous, and absurd Olympic event ever held.